Well, my name is Ashleigh Boyd. I have been working in the emergency department, 21 years now. And I started when I was 17 volunteering and went through EMT and paramedic school and went into nursing. I have a passion for pathophysiology. Subconscious behaviors is one of my favorite jams, and psychological hacks. I really got into high performance habits about 4 or 5 years ago as well. I have a certification in neurolinguistics, and I also just love holistic medicine. I love the science behind it. And I also really, really love biofield awareness, which is one of my favorite things I've ever learned about formally. I've always known about it as from a child, and I really dove into it about 4 years ago as well. I'm also a mom of two little boys. They are 4 and 3 years old, and I am the stereotypical emergency room nurse who is married to a fireman. Well, I am PRN in the emergency room and in the ICU. Just because I'm PRN doesn't mean that I don't work a lot. I think I get that, oh, you are only PRN, which no, I work 24 to 48 hours a week. I just love the ability to choose my schedule a little bit more. Flexibility, I guess, is the best for us. Just with my husband's schedule, he works 48 hours and then he's off 96. And then my kids started preschool this year, so the balance is much easier with the flexibility. I've always been in the emergency room. And when I had my son, or when I was pregnant with my son, I went into the ICU. And I call myself the fake ICU nurse. And I gladly wear that title because ICU is such a different specialty. I learned so much over the last 4 years when I was in the ICU. But I went back to the emergency department last, or 2 years ago, actually. I call it the mothership. I was being called back to my homeland. I feel much more comfortable in the ER. And I started a company called Treat the Nurse about 5 years ago now. And that I would consider my absolute full-time job. I'm always dedicating my time to that when I am not being a mama. Well, I really started a passionate mission about 5 years ago because of the decreased awareness, I think, on the stress level and burnout level of nurses. And COVID hit, and now obviously the light is shown on that. But this has been going on for 100 years, especially with high stress jobs, for instance, fire, EMS, police, and nursing. Just because we've made it normal for us to experience traumatic events doesn't mean that it is. And so I really went on a mission when I had an emotional breakdown for myself. I had a complete distraught, like disconnect for myself of, do I really want to do this anymore? And so I sought out resources, and they did nothing to me and for me. I tried counseling. I tried psychologists, psychiatrists, anything and everything, EAP. Everybody wanted to put a pill down my throat. And I just knew that that was not the answer for myself. I knew that this was something that I needed to fix within me with simple steps, simplicity. I always say, go back to the basics. And I say that when I'm training a new grad to my kids. We always overcomplicate things. And so when I went on this mission to help people and really started with myself, was I reached out to about 150 to 200 psychologists, psychiatrists, emotional intelligence, artificial intelligence gurus, to see if this would be possible. I share this story, and people sometimes comment to me that it might be a little woo-woo, or might sound a little crazy, but I had a moment of my life where I didn't sleep for 96 hours, and I woke up with the technique that I created and started my business with. I literally woke up and had multiple answers to how to create this technique, and I wrote them down feverishly, and I contacted many different people, and one of my favorite gentlemen, Donald Hoffman, he really helped me realize that, yeah, this is totally feasible and this will totally work. You just have to do it. And that's when I was like, high performance habits. How do people get into the places that they want to be? It's because they actually follow through and they do the habit that they want to have. And that's when I created this 3-step technique to decrease compassion fatigue, burnout, and stress, because I didn't want to fall through the cracks. And then becoming a mom, I didn't want my kids to see me hate my job every single day. And I didn't want them to see their dad hate their job. And that's why I went on a mission. Yeah, basically, we've tried it on over 300 different people outside of the hospital. Being, we did a clinical study in a hospital, and then we've done it outside of the hospital, and we've tried it on high stress jobs, basically fire, EMS, police, and also just different administrative jobs that just because they're not seeing what we see, but their stress level is different, it's all worked 100% across the board. Just because you're in administration doesn't mean that you don't hear the stories of what's going on, and doesn't mean that you haven't had that experience or an experience with your own family members. So just because their stress is different doesn't mean that they don't deserve to have an outlet. Their outlet might be different than ours. I mean, as nurses, we tend to joke about what our situations are, or we talk about the cases that we've had. They might do the same, but it's just, to us, it's kind of boring, I would say, not to offend anybody, but about their situations. But everybody deals with stress differently. Our stress is just different because we're dealing with lives. So, really, this answer seems to be simplistic, but it really isn't. Each person is so different. And a lot of the time, as healthcare professional healthcare professionals, or high stress professionals, we're given a tool belt to fix other people, but we're not given a tool belt to fix ourselves. And I think that's when I had that sleep deprivation of 96 hours. I actually contemplated checking myself into the emergency department, which, as a professional and an ER professional, this, like, you're at the last straw. Like, that what you're about to put yourself through, but that's how desperate I was for help. I hated putting on my scrubs. I mean, I sobbed. I was a rolling, not nice person on wheels. I would curse, but I'm trying to be kind. It was awful. Everybody and everything knew it. My dogs knew I was different. I mean, it was that bad. Every bone in my being hated the job because it was something that I used to love, but then it was something that I now hate. And I knew it could be different. And so realizing and recognizing those signs, I think, is what's lacking in our careers, is that nobody teaches you to look for what's going on. Just because you're tired doesn't mean that you're tired. Just because you're physically drained doesn't mean that you're just physically drained. These are classic signs that you are beginning the journey of going down the rabbit hole of compassion fatigue. And I used to hate the word, I mean, hate. And I know that's a very powerful word, but when I would hear compassion fatigue, it was like my head would turn around like the exorcist, like, oh, I cannot stand that word. But once I researched it and understood that it is a good trigger word, and if you get to that point where it does trigger you, red flag. I mean, it's very simple, but we're not taught to recognize those things. We're supposed to be the empathetic robot of giving medicine, listening to everybody's problems, and saving people from critical situations, but we're never taught to debrief. And that's when you have to learn yourself to recognize it within you. We can give you the algorithm of this is what it is, this is what it is, but you really have to start becoming tuned to yourself and not ignoring it. We're taught to ignore ourselves all the time. And that's when you have to do the hard stop of, if I'm not here to take care of the patients, who is? I mean, people are leaving this field left and right, hundreds of thousands of people. It used to be about 300,000 people a year would leave within the last 5 years. Now they're predicting up to 5 to 700,000 this year are going to be gone. Who are going to take care of the patients? That just means increased burnout and increased secondary traumatic stress for us. So that's why recognizing these symptoms are so big for us. So many people are going to have sentinel events within the hospital systems and long-term care facilities because there's not going to be the staff to take care of them appropriately. I honestly think that we need to take the BS out of the treatment. So instead of having us do all of these competencies to make sure we know what we're doing, they need to be supporting emotionally. We 99% of nurses went into nursing to care for people, and they're not in it for the money. So dangling the money isn't going to be the reason. You're just creating a larger burnout. We just want to be recognized. We just want to be shown that we are appreciated. I don't want junk food shoved in my face. I don't want donuts. I don't want cake. I don't want pizza parties. I want you to say, hey, would you like a 30-minute lunch? It's something simple of just, I always say you want to be seen, be heard. And to me, that's the biggest thing. We're not seen, we're not heard. We're just there as a number. And in reality, they've taken the professionalism out of nursing. And that to me is huge. I think if the administrators actually walked around and saw how many things that people balance while titrating 5-6 medications, breathing for someone, another cardiac arrest rolls through the door, another kiddo comes in with needing respiratory treatment, but you're supposed to be there and be empathetic, but yet you have 3 other patients that are critical. If they saw trying to balance that every day, then there might be a slight chance and slight hope that we could put the professionalism back in nursing and really treat it as a respectful career. But now it's treated as dime a dozen, and it's just sad. It's just recognition and emotional support. That's all anybody ever wants. I would say it's partially like my fault in the sense of I should prep my snacks because I and guarantee that I'm not going to get a lunch. So if I had my snacks in front of me that were healthy instead of just grabbing garbage, it would be a big difference. But I really think I live off protein shakes and my body just doesn't like that. And it's the actual stress, the burnout, the secondary traumatic stress that I can feel that I hold on to extra weight, and that is like a literal hormonal imbalance. And that's one of the biggest things about being able to debrief, is that you have to do it every day, multiple times a day, before, during, and after your shift. And I can guarantee that I would be way heavier, gain back probably all that weight if I didn't do that. And that's not because of just eating crap. It's the stress. You can literally see that on people about how stress levels affect their physical being. And it's not just your emotional well-being, it's your physical being. I mean, they always show pictures of presidents in the United States, like before and after, and they've aged like 100 years because of the stress. Well, you can put in, insert a nurse manager or nurse director who started their career and they were pretty fit, pretty well rounded in the sense of emotional and physical well-being. Take a year, 90% of them gain 10 to 50 pounds of weight because of the stress that they endure. And it was interesting. I got that statistic from a book that I was reading, and it was like, I'm going to kind of take note of that, you know? So when I was walking around the hospital, I'm like, God, I've known these gals for years. Throughout the hospital systems that I've worked in, we've all intermingled. And lo and behold, all of them are morbidly obese. And it's not because they're just stuffing their face. It's because their actual hormonal imbalance of being so stressed. And to me, that's devastating. That should be a red flag in itself. We're healthcare providers, yet we won't embrace the own health care of ourselves. I mean, that just blows my mind. We've all complained across the board. I know all across the United States about the food that's offered within the hospital systems and what time cafeterias are open. It's like, why do you have to offer fried chicken strips and French fries? The salad that they offer has been sitting there for God knows how long and is disgusting. It's like, there should be healthier options for the bedside nurses that are doing night shift and day shift. I mean, some days the cafeteria isn't even open and it's like, huh? Like, how am I supposed to get my food? It's just very interesting that it's all become about the patient, but yet if there was no staff, there would be no patient. It blows my mind. And I asked that same question so many different times, but I honestly don't know why administration hasn't done that, or they will partner with a company. This happened at a facility I was at a few years ago. They partnered with a company and they had all these beautiful menus out and all the statistics on all the food. And then you go to get it and they're like, oh, it's not being offered. What? Like, why do you have pictures of like what we can have and then we go in there and it's not there? Oh, a lot of people don't eat that. Well, you don't offer it, so how do you know? Well, and it all goes back to my favorite motto, and my husband probably wants to kick me in my shins when he hears this because it's go back to the basics. Like that's exactly what we're taught in nursing, airway, breathing, circulation. Why can't we have nice, decent looking shoes, good food, and a break? I mean, these aren't like we're not asking for millions of dollars or to change the world with these simple thoughts. It's literally just taking care of ourselves. It's that simple. But it's like this faux pas to even like mention it. It's like, oh, I'm sorry. When a diabetic educator who's 280 pounds comes to educate a patient and the patient looks at you like, how is this gal educating me on diabetes? It's a problem. Like you can't even respect your healthcare workers because they're not even in good shape. Back in the day when drug reps used to be able to come to the hospital and swoon you with food, it would be like, here's your salad, here's your chicken salad. Like they realized like what was lacking within and that's what they did. But for the effort is what's wanted. It's not that you're bringing us cupcakes, it's that you actually acknowledge, take the time to do something for us, and it's that simple gratitude that makes the world go round. I mean, like you were saying, going back to, it's a generational thing. When somebody holds the door for me, I'll be darned I turn around 100 times and say thank you because it doesn't happen that often. And that to me is again something that is so simple and so basic, yet it's thrown out the window. And it's that gratitude that really is lacking. And I think it goes down to energy, right? So everything is energy. When you thank somebody, you can really feel if they're genuine and you're just like, it lights you up when they are. And that relieves so much stress right then and there because you're like, dang, that's why I did this, is to help somebody and it be acknowledged. I mean, I'll never forget. I have been in this field for 21 years. And just 4 months ago, I took care of a patient who was alert and oriented when we withdrew care. And she passed away with her family and myself at bedside. I worked my butt off for 12 and a half hours. I was like sweating to try to keep this gal alive, and it just wasn't going to happen. And she was aware, and it was the most heartbreaking situation. But the family, oh, I get teary-eyed. They took the time to listen to what I was talking about with my kids, because I was with them. I was a one-to-one patient with them, and I sat and I talked with them, which is so rare. And we were just talking about my kids and where they grew up, and they used to go to this place called Grant's Farm when they were younger. And I was like, oh my gosh, I take my kids there all the time. I love it. Like, I totally want to invest in like one of their little tours that they do. I went back to work and I was called into the supervisor's office. I was like, uh-oh, what did I do? And they were like, we don't normally give this to the staff because it's such a large amount of money. And I was like, what are you talking about? The family had bought my family a tour at this place that was like $450 to go behind the scenes and see all these animals, because they were so thankful that I took the time with their loved one. And in reality, they taught me. And it was just the actions of back and forth of the energy and the love. And that's why you go into it, was because you just got, they thanked you and you felt it. And it's the same thing, the basics, showing the basics. We want food, water, and love. And when you get that, you're pretty satisfied. And when you don't feel the love, you don't want to be there. And it was a pretty pivotal moment in my bedside career, because nothing like that had ever happened. And it was just an amazing, thankful feeling for myself of just that bonding moment. Now, every time I go there, I always think of them. So it's just really interesting. Like, I've only cried like 6 times in my entire career, like at the hospital. And I was like hysterically silent crying because I was just like so thankful that they recognized how hard I had worked, but how connected I felt to them, because it was such an emotional journey with her being completely awake, alert, oriented, and knowing what was going on, but having the time to be able to actually be with the family and support them through that is so rare. And that's why I think we all felt just so connected. I mean, when you turn off life support and you tell the patient, like, I am so sorry, I'm really thankful that I was able to take care of you. And she was like, thank you for the long fight. And I was just like, are you kidding me right now? Like, this is crazy. And the family was just thankful. And like you said, normally it's when somebody survives, but it was just a really amazing moment in my career. The biggest thing is recognizing when you are feeling um, anxious, sweaty, small triggers, like a little bit of lip sweat, a little bit of nose sweat. And that's not from you running around. That's from you feeling a sense of overwhelm, a sense of, I don't know what I'm doing right now. Why am I here? Cyclical thought patterns, your heart racing. And these signs could be before you go to work, during work, after work. Really recognizing you, taking the time to not push something away or under the rug. We've been taught to always don't talk about your feelings, don't talk about how you're physically feeling. And that's something that has to stop. So I always tell people, it sounds a little nutty, but it works. And when you're in these moments, to physically, either out loud or in your head, tell yourself, just stop. Stop. And there's been proven interventions of using 4-letter words with a lot of gusto, whether it's a curse word or using stop, that your hormones in your brain start to fluctuate and then flood your body to stop what you're doing at that moment. So it's your automatic barometer of resetting yourself. So if you're feeling like you're going down those physical routes of being anxious or like feeling hatred, tell yourself stop. And it's like a hard stop in the body. It stops that fluctuation. It allows new hormones to start going at a regular rate instead of being flooded. Also, just physical attributes of when you're emotionally pushed, you need to really understand that you can stop your cyclical thought pattern at that moment, whether you're changing the situation, removing yourself from that patient, removing yourself from that stressful drive, really changing that emotional pattern. I always like to say it's like a highway. You're driving on a highway and you get off the same exit every time. Well, you need to go down a little bit more and create a new exit. So, say they're redoing that route on the highway. Yeah, there's a bunch of traffic and it's super annoying while you're learning. But then you get that new highway, and hey, you know what? That stoplight's faster. Or they created a roundabout, so it's way easier to get off the highway. You just have to become aware and learn that new habit. And yes, it can be annoying, but don't beat yourself up if you don't do it every single time. It takes time to learn. High performance habits are created by always following through with your action. There's a very simple story. I always lead with Sarah Blakely because her husband is a very brilliant man. He's actually created 5 different billion-dollar companies and sold them multiple times. Well, I was at a conference and I was listening to him speak, and he was talking about how you have these simple habits that you do. Well, you can't create a high performance habit if you can't have a small habit. So he was watering his lawn and he just dropped the hose because he's like, oh crap, I got to go get the kids. He had one kid with him and he had to go pick up his other kids. And so he left the hose. Well, he was backing out of the driveway and he slammed on the brakes and he hopped out of the car, and his kid was like, what are you doing, Dad? And he's like, I'm rolling up the hose. We don't want to have a bad habit. We start what we start, we finish. And it was something that was so simple that he said. And I was like, ah. So now when I'm with my kids, I'm like, we need to follow through with everything that we say to create good habits. So we have our habits of we take off our shoes and we put them in our shoe bin, or just something simple like that. But it's starting to recognize those patterns for yourself so you can either break them to start new ones, or just downright start a new habit when you go to work. I always debrief the moment I go through the door of work, and they're like, well, what are you debriefing? I'm like, just being there. Like, being there is a stressor. You automatically feel the stress when you walk in there. So you need to debrief. And those habits are what you need to start learning to recognize. So just really being aware of you and going back to the simple things of what our body does. It speeds up the heart, we sweat, we have cyclical thought patterns, and just those simple recognitions can really turn those bad habits into high performance habits. Our shoe little bin for the kids is right at the door. And for me, the easy recognition of knowing that would be a bad habit is the shoes are right there. And I'm trying to get out the door and I have to step over them. Why would I need to step over them if I just put them away right away? Then you wouldn't have an obstacle to go through. I always break it down into energy levels. Every single cell in our body is energy. The camera's energy. Our cell phones emit energy. Everything is energy, right? So we want to be the most efficient, effective machines that we possibly can. And that goes down to making your life simple. Well, if I have to exude more energy to lift my leg up a little bit more to get up over that shoe, I could have saved that energy for another thought. And I know that sounds really ridiculous, but that's how I've had to break it down in my mind for myself to get to where I am now, is because I'm super, everybody always says they're super busy, but I know that each person is busy, but it's a matter of how you use your energy. So recognizing the bad habit would be, how much energy are you exuding to get to where you want to go? Sometimes it's way easier to do something yourself than it is to delegate it out. And that's because you're more efficient at it. Well, what if you took a couple of minutes to really teach a person how you want something done or how it should be done appropriately and correctly? And then you can delegate that out so then you have your own energy to go do something else. I always just break it down into simple energy. Yeah, and I guess that came from I was a terrible delegator. I would tell people to do things and then it wasn't done the way I wanted it, and then I would be pissed. And it was like, "Hello, look at the teacher." You need to teach people the way things that should be done correctly, quickly, and safely. And that could be for anything in your life. Somebody who cuts your lawn, somebody who cleans your house, or how you drive, somebody's in an Uber, wherever. You can't tell an Uber to take you somewhere and then tell them how to get you there. You're leaving it up to them. And that's why they use a GPS. Somebody who's cutting your lawn, well, they have to come every week. Well, why didn't you ask them to cut it shorter so then they can come every week and a half or 2 weeks? I mean, it's very simple to delegate, but it's an art of learning how to delegate. So once you can really understand how your brain works and how you express it, I think that's a huge tool for yourself just in life in general, not just nursing. Yeah, absolutely. So there's tons of resources that I personally love. Not just my technique that I created, which it's a 3-step short process. It can be once learned, it can be done in seconds. The first time you learn it, it takes about 15 minutes, and then very goes down very quickly down into about 30 seconds after you understand what's going on, and then you can literally debrief like this. But also the MHA associate is a mental health association, has amazing resources specifically for medical professionals and just um, average Joes, I would say, no, not necessarily medical professionals, but they're targeted for our thought processes, and they have tons of resources, different companies for specific things. To me, that's really big. Also, sound healing is something that I have forgotten to mention. Sound healing has been around for 3,500 years, I believe. It's now within the last 25, 30 years becoming very notable with music therapy, but also sound healing has been shown and proven in multiple clinical studies to reduce stress and specifically PTSD, which nurses experience secondary traumatic stress, which is the equivalent to PTSD in active military. Um, Sound healing is huge. My friend Gail Lynn has amazing resources and audibles that you can listen to that are specifically for nurses for burnout. She lists them by symptom, and that to me is huge and makes it easy and less steps, less energy to get to what you want to get to. Also, Deepak Chopra, he's a global guy. He has amazing resources for learning about energy and learning about yourself. To me, that is the biggest resource that you could ever have, is learning yourself. And obviously also you guys have amazing resources as well to listen to. And I also want to just say that just asking anybody and everybody who they use as a resource is huge too. We always forget to ask our partners in crime that we work with, hey, what do you do? And that also gives um, a good positive way instead of just reliving our stressors. It's a good way to connect with people that you might not have ever connected with at work about how to de-stress. Yeah, also my website is called treatthenurse.com. There's multiple resources on there as well. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm not on there too often, but it's a great way to connect and get to a personal level if needed. On my website, there's multiple resources and publications, as well as a few quizzes to know what levels your burnout and stress are at. And when you do those quizzes, they'll reroute you to what specific sources are the best sources that I have found, as well as specific debriefing techniques that you can have available to yourself. It's been a long time coming, you know, when you're a mom and you're a nurse and a fire wife. I really put the business on the back burner until I was invited to do a clinical study in our emergency department. And once that happened and I got scientific data behind my technique that proved that it worked 100% of the time, decreased burnout and stress by 10.17% in less than 30 seconds. That's when I was like, holy crap, I knew it worked and now it does and I can prove it. So then that's when I really started to go on the mission of really sharing it and knowing that this really can be a business to treat the nurse, not the patient.